Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Story Time. Today we are reading Little Red Riding Hood, right? Our letter of the week is R. So we are reading Little Red Riding Hood. And remember, red and riding both start with the sound, which is the sound of R. Okay, so I want you to listen today for the characters in the book, and we can see obviously that one of the characters is Little Red Riding Hood, right? So we have Little Red Riding Hood, and I want you to listen for the other characters that you hear about in the story. And I also want you to listen for where the story takes place, okay? So I'll see you in a little bit. Enjoy the book. Little Red Riding Hood by Gabby Goldsack. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived with her mommy in a cottage on the edge of a big forest. Whenever the little girl went outside to play, she wore a beautiful red cloak that her grandma had made for her. It had a big red hood, so everyone called the little girl Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mommy asked her to take a basket of food to Grandma. Grandma isn't feeling well, Mommy explained, and I'm sure she'd love to see you. Grandma lived on the other side of the forest, so Mommy drew a map on a piece of paper so that Little Red Riding Hood wouldn't get lost. And remember, don't talk to any strangers along the way, said Mommy, helping Little Red Riding Hood into her cloak. Little Red Riding Hood took the basket of food and skipped into the forest. On the way, Little Red Riding Hood saw some beautiful blue flowers. Ooh, Grandma might like these, she thought. As she bent down to pick a handful of the flowers, she didn't realize someone else was in the forest. Hello, little girl, said a deep, growly voice. Little Red Riding Hood jumped with fright. A big wolf appeared out from behind one of the trees. Hello, replied Little Red Riding Hood, smiling back at the wolf. She had already forgotten her mommy's warning. Where are you going? Growled the wolf. I'm visiting my sick grandma who lives on the other side of the forest, Little Red Riding Hood explained. Ah, what a kind girl you are, smiled the wolf, showing off his razor-sharp teeth. Just then, the wolf's tummy gave a loud, rumbly grumble. What was that? Asked Little Red Riding Hood. Just some thunder over the hills, said the sneaky, hungry wolf as he ran away as fast as he could to Grandma's cottage. The hungry wolf peered through Grandma's window and saw the old lady in bed. With a loud howl, the wolf dashed into the cottage and gobbled up Grandma in one large gulp. Then the wolf put on Grandma's spare nightcap and glasses, clambered into her bed, and pulled the quilt up to his chin. Now all he had to do was wait for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. When Little Red Riding Hood reached the cottage, she was surprised to find the front door wide open. Grandma, she called, are you there? I'm in the bedroom, replied the wolf in a strange, wobbly voice. Little Red Riding Hood went into the bedroom and gasped in surprise when she saw her grandma. She looked sort of different. Grandma must be very sick, thought Little Red Riding Hood. I hope it isn't catching. What big eyes you have, Grandma, she said as she went over to the bed. All the better for seeing you with, the wolf replied in the same wobbly voice. Grandma, what big ears you have, Little Red Riding Hood added, moving closer. All the better for hearing you with, said the wolf with a toothy grin. My, what big teeth you have, Grandma, stuttered Little Red Riding Hood. All the better for eating you with. Little Red Riding Hood screamed, ah, and tried to run away, but the hungry wolf was too fast. He leaped out of the bed and gobbled her up in a single greedy gulp. A passing woodcutter heard Little Red Riding Hood scream and ran into the cottage. When he saw the wolf's enormous belly, he guessed what had happened. He picked up the wolf and shook him hard. Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma flew out of the wolf's mouth. Luckily, they weren't hurt, but they were very cross. Grandma, Little Red Riding Hood, and the woodcutter chased the wolf into the forest and over the hill. The embarrassed wolf never came back, and Little Red Riding Hood never spoke to strangers again. The end. All right, so how did you like Little Red Riding Hood? So, who were the characters? And remember, characters mean the people or animals in a story. So we had first, in the beginning, there was her mom, but I don't have a picture of her mom. But her mom was in the beginning of the story. Then we have Little Red Riding Hood. And who did Little Red Riding Hood meet in the woods? She met the wolf. The wolf, right? And then what happened? The wolf ran to whose house? Where was Little Red Riding Hood going? She was going to Grandma's house. But did she see Grandma next? She got to the house and she thought she saw Grandma, but who did she really see? She saw the wolf dressed up as Grandma. He was a tricky, sneaky wolf, wasn't he? Then, who did we meet next? We still didn't meet the grandma. The next person that we met was the woodcutter, right? He was cutting wood and he heard Little Red Riding Hood scream, "Ah!" before she was eaten by the wolf. And so he came and he helped, right? He saw how big the wolf's belly was and he knew, uh-oh, I know just what happened here. So he shook him upside down until Little Red Riding Hood popped out. And who else? We finally meet Grandma, right? So that was when we met Grandma, was the very, very end of the story. And then they chased these three, Little Red Riding Hood, the woodcutter, and Grandma. They chased the wolf away, and he was never to be seen again. He was embarrassed. He lost. So they never saw him again. And Little Red Riding Hood learned her lesson. What was her lesson? Don't talk to strangers. And after that, she didn't talk to strangers, right? Now, what was the setting of the story? Remember, the setting of the story is where and when it takes place. So it started off in the woods, right outside of Little Red Riding Hood's house, but in the, not the woods, they called it the forest. It started off in the forest, right? And then Little Red Riding Hood treks through the forest. She walks through the forest. That's where she meets the wolf. And then where does she get? She gets to a cottage. So the second part of this, of the setting, was the cottage, right? And then she goes inside the cottage and she finds the wolf, who she thought was Grandma, in bed. And then at the very end, they are back outside of the cottage again and in the forest. So there were really two places that the story happened that made up the setting, right? The forest and the cottage. Great. So I hope that you enjoyed Little Red Riding Hood. It's a classic fairy tale, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.